Welcome to Avoice for Creators. I'm your host, Daniel Norton. This is the July wrap-up. If you missed last month, I've moved all the podcasts into one format here. So we're going to get all the podcasts together. These are video podcasts, so if you want to see my smiling face, you can watch. If you want to catch them every week, though, be sure to check it out on any podcatcher that you like, Apple, Spotify, etc. There'll be links in the description below. In any case, in July, we talked about a lot of different subjects. We started off by talking about framing your goals, then what it means to be the best in the world, and being a part of something. The last two podcasts this month were a little more philosophical, we'll say, talking about creating the face of God and enjoying things that don't last forever. I hope you enjoy these. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Please do like the video and subscribe to the channel and do all that goodness. So the other day I was looking on Facebook, which I don't look on Facebook nearly as much as I used to. If you're reaching out to me on Facebook and I haven't replied, that's probably why. But anyways, my mother had once again shared a meme that was something to the effect of being happy doesn't mean having what you want, it's wanting what you have, that kind of thing. You see these kind of motivational things all the time. And I'm also reading this book, The Artist Way, which I'll put a link to in the description. They're not directly connected, but in some ways they are, because basically the idea here that I'm getting from this anyways, I just started, is that it's not like here's a goal here and we're not happy till we're there. It's live in the moment. Now is where we are. You won't know what it is that you want or need or whatever till you get there, right? You need to do it, right? Get into it. And I think this is super important because one thing that we do as creators, as business people, as people in general, is we set goals. And goals are good on some level, but at the same time, when you set a 5-year goal, a 10-year goal, think back 5 or 10 years. Are you the same person? Haven't you changed? Haven't your desires changed? Isn't your situation changed, right? Where you are financially, possibly, where you desire things that people you hang out with, hobbies that you do, possibly your job, things change and evolve. And while we can set something out into the future and say, hey, I want to start a photo business in 5 years and start doing the steps towards it, we have to also just be in the moment. It's this kind of odd combination. Because if we're only in the moment, then we probably won't ever get in. We might be super happy, right? But we won't ever get to these other places, right? Because to be a business person, to be an artist professionally, to really put it out there, means that it takes these extra steps. It's not just the creation, right? It's easy to talk about, well, we can just create for ourselves, and that's awesome if that's what you're doing. But if you want to share it, if you want to put things out in the world, whether it be writing, photography, painting, you want to do YouTube videos, a podcast, you got to do it, right? So in order to do this, we have to give ourselves a step-by-step process. So how do we do this? Where are we, right? How does this work, and how do we pull it off? I think that, like I kind of alluded to at the beginning, what we really need is some kind of a balance. You've got to have some basic ideas. You've got to have actionable steps, as they say, but you also need to be flexible, which is pretty much good advice in general in life, right? You need to say, hey, I want to do this thing. I want to shoot photography full time. I want to shoot school pictures, whatever it is. But if an opportunity comes up to shoot dance school pictures and not elementary school pictures, no, that's not on my list. I'm not going to do that. You've got to take that opportunity. Also, if you're aiming for, the main school in town, but a smaller school reaches out to you, don't feel bad or don't feel like it's not fantastic, because that's an opportunity, and go that direction. Maybe that smaller school where you can have a more intimate relationship will end up being a better client over time, because you'll have more interaction with people directly as opposed to like cattle call, right? Who knows how it's going to work, or vice versa. Maybe you want the smaller school and the big school calls you, and you can figure out a way to develop it and turn it into something that you really want. And this is really what it comes down to, framing. We need to look at what's in front of us and then adjust, right, our framing. Where photographers know about that. We know that when we look at a scene, we choose what we want to focus on, not just the actual focus, but what's in the frame, right? Every photograph, you're making a choice. You see the whole world in front of you, but you choose to photograph this piece in front of you. And the reason why you do that is because you have something to say about it, or because it touches you, or you think it's important. And that's what we have to do in our life. If we are looking at our lives through this wide open thing, and we're looking past what's in front of us to focus on the stuff in the background, the mountains, but right in front of us are, beautiful flowers. We may never get to that mountain because maybe the pass is too far away. Maybe there's a giant river in the middle. Maybe it just take too long because we don't have the time to devote to it because other things in life. But right in front of us are these flowers, and those flowers can also make an amazingly beautiful photo if we just take the time to see them. So what we need to do is have aspirations, have ideas, have an idea for where we want to go, but be open to what's in front of us, what's there. Sometimes the things that you photograph or the things that you create in your art are not what you originally thought you would make, but sometimes they are better. I can say that, I was very headstrong when I first started, and I only wanted to do fashion. At first, I turned down all other work, but partially because I needed the money, and partially because I just started to enjoy it, I started to take on other types of jobs. I started to shoot portraits. I started to shoot product photography. I started to shoot other things. Some things I like better than others. And honestly, now I would consider myself much more of a portrait photographer than a fashion photographer. I did that. That was my career. I, shot plenty of catalogs and magazine stuff. But now I would much rather shoot people, even if they are models, I'm still shooting them as a portrait because the portrait is what I found kind of by mistake. I knew I liked portraits, but I didn't know that I wanted to make them until I saw one right in front of me. So I would love to hear from you. Do you have goals? Do you set 5-year goals, 10-year goals? Do you follow them strictly, or do you open yourself up to what's around you? Or are you just open to what's around you with no goals and you're just kind of figuring it out? This week, I want to talk a little bit about a new book I'm reading, but very specifically, the first part I read here, which is about being the best in the world. So this book is called The Dip by Seth Godin. I will put a link to it down below. I've reached the point now where I'm just going to start buying his books. I generally get them from the library and then I read them and then I end up buying it and put it in my shelf so I can reference it back. But he hasn't had a dud yet. They're really good books. So this is it right here, The Dip. And it's basically about quitting. So I'll let you know more as we progress through this, but it's interesting, right? It's an interesting idea of when should you quit versus when should you not quit. And it's about not just about business, but about life in general. But this part struck me. This is right from the very beginning. This is page 10. Best in the world? Anyone who's going to hire you, buy from you, recommend you, vote for you, or do you what you want them to do is going to wonder if you are the best choice. Best as in best for them right now, based on what they believe and what they know. And in the world as in their world, the world they have access to. So this is very interesting because, and really well put, this is the thing, right? Especially in the arts, what is the best? Who is the best photographer? What is the best way to film this? What's the best lighting to use? What's the best portfolio site? What's the best way to reach out to clients? Of course, now I'm getting a sideways thing, but the idea of what is best really comes down to what is best for you at that moment based on what you have access to. I could say the best camera is a phase 1 back on some kind of medium format camera and using broad color lighting and this and that. But is that the best if you're walking around the park to take snapshots? Probably not, right? What is the best? Maybe your phone is the best in that case. What we need to think about is situation. And this is true when we're showing our work. What is the best way to get our stuff across to our clients? Best as in you have access to, they have access to, that's the best. You may say, well, Google is the best search engine, but if it's impossible because of your budget or the way things are set up to advertise using Google, then that's not the best way for you to do it. Maybe the best way is to take a little ad out in a local flyer or put signs up at the florist, stuff like that if you're a wedding photographer, or go to a school and put poster up. Maybe those are the best ways for you. Maybe those are the worst ways for you if you're big and you're trying to scale. Maybe spending money on billboards or magazine inserts or online advertising makes more sense. And what we really have to figure out is when we are taking ourselves and putting ourselves out there, what is it that we're offering? Whether you're charging for it or not, if you decide, you know what, I really believe in a certain cause and I want to use my artistic ability, let's say as a photographer, to help this cause. I really believe that pets should be pets who have been abused, or pets be dogs that have been race dogs or whatever, should find homes later in life. It's harder because everybody wants a puppy, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my photography and I'm going to help places that, take these dogs in by giving them free photography. I'm not charging for it, but what makes you different than anybody else who's going to offer the same thing? Because there's probably other people doing it, right? Why would they go to you? And you might say, well, I'm doing it for free, so too bad. But you know what? You want to do it, right? If you didn't want to do it, you wouldn't have been thinking about it. So the idea here is that this is something you want, and this is super important. This comes down to so much of what we talked about. If you want something, and it could be just about anything. I mean, I would like a scoop of ice cream. Maybe after I finish recording. What you need to do is decide, do I really want this? And I think this is what this book is going to end up being about. I will let you know. Do I really want this? How much do I want this? Is it worth my time to become what is effectively the best? And the best means the best choice for the clients that I want. If I'm trying to get my stuff in a fashion magazine, I have to be the best fashion photographer, the one that's easiest to work with, the one that has the most access to clothing, the one that delivers on time, the one that produces images that are in line with the vibe of the magazine, right? I have to be the one that answers my phone when the editor calls. And this is important because when I first started working in the industry, I was a photo assistant. And how did I become the best photo assistant in Miami? And I feel like I was. I was sought after, charged more than other people, and worked all the time. Did I start that way? Absolutely not. How did I make it happen? I was always available. I showed up early. I brought with me, a Swiss Army knife, whatever, like I was just ready. I was ready to do things. I charged for it, but I would be willing to work longer hours. I could work last minute. I made myself available because as much as photographers, and once you start working for the same ones there, this is less of an issue, but as much as photographers want, generally they're nice people, most people, they want the assistants to be treated well or whatever. You're really just there to do a job. And that's what you got to do. You've got to go in there and go, you know what? This is going to be a 15-hour day, so I'm going to have to charge you extra, but I will be there and I will give you 100% that whole day. And I'll go through this and I'll do this every single time. I'll travel with you and make sure that everything's cool, that I'll watch your gear when you're trying to deal with the client. I'm not going to slack off. I was going to say be on my phone, but there was no, there were cell phones, but not like smartphones. I'm not going to be that person. I'm going to be the best possible photo assistant. And because of that, I become incredibly sought after. And at first, and again, the doors were being knocked out. I was busy. I was working every day. Started charging more. Still working every day. Started charging more. Still working every day. Eventually, priced myself out of some people, so I worked a little bit less, but I was still making more because of my price. Now I have money and time to work on my own photography. Contrast that to other friends I had who were like, oh, I'm struggling this month and I really want to have a new car, or I want to have new clothes, or I want to make sure I eat at restaurants, so I'm going to take this part-time job. Oh, photographer called me. I can't answer the phone because I'm working, or, and then so I don't call back quick enough. Oh, I can't stay late tonight because I have another commitment. You've got to be the best to get to the point. And you might be saying, well, I shouldn't have to do that. Then this isn't the thing for you, right? You've got to decide, this is what I want to do. And this is true if you just want to give things away too. If you want to be out there and be an artist and show your work and get people to see it, you got to put yourself out there. You've got to be willing to do it. And being the best just means being at the right place at the right time and doing the best possible job you can that, of course, does what the client needs. So that's what being the best is to me. I would love to know what you would consider being the best. Do you have similar stories? Have you done this type of work? Have you become the best at what you're doing? Let me know. So this week I want to talk about a quote I saw on Twitter, but I also want to kind of catch you up a little bit. I had recorded, 4 episodes ahead of time because I was traveling, and a few things have changed here on the podcast, so let's talk. Number one, if you have been looking at the podcast on YouTube as well as here, or just there, and now all of a sudden you're here, I'm going to start publishing the podcast on YouTube only once a month. I'm going to condense them down, put all 4 or 5, depending on the month, maybe 3. I think most months will be 4, at the last Friday of each month. Basically, YouTube algorithm reasons. The way that it works on YouTube is the podcast, because the place I was putting it and the way it was working. You probably don't care too much about this, but just know that they are still going to be on YouTube. If you like to see me and you want to see it weekly, you can watch it on Spotify, because on Spotify, it's still a video podcast. So if you just want to hear my voice, then any podcatcher, as they call them, will work. On that note, I might as well ask right now while I'm talking to you, if you haven't reviewed the podcast or rated it yet, please do so. Apple is the best place to do that. Even if you don't listen to it on Apple, if you could go to iTunes, if you have an account, find the podcast, give it a rating, give it a review. That really helps a lot. So, speaking of helping me, for those who don't know, I wrote a book. It's called How to Stop Negative Thinking. It's about, as you might imagine, negative thinking and how to stop it. This has been a big issue with me my whole life, and I think a lot of creatives and just people in general. It's not a photography book. It's not specifically targeted at artists, but that's it. You can obviously purchase it if you'd like, but I have just had a voice actor, I guess you call him, record the book as an audiobook, and I have some free coupons. If you have an Audible account and you're in the US or the UK, or you use those Audibles, depending on where you are, then send me an email. My email address is in the show notes. Let me know you want a free code. I've got, I think, 10 or 12 of them, so please just send me a note and I will send you a code. Download it for free. No obligation. Obviously, if you'd like to rate it, that'd be fantastic. I think I got a really nice voice actor. So anyways, check that out. Well, that's the end of the news for now. This is a news segment. Let's get into it. So I was actually sitting down. I have a few things I want to talk about in the podcast over the next few weeks. And I was sitting down to record one of them, which will probably be the next one. And I saw this on Twitter. And I'm just going to read it to you. This is from Simon Sinek. I think that's how you say it. They're an author. I've talked about their books a bunch of times. Here we go. The goal is to feel a part of something, not just play a part in anything. And I thought this was really nice because this is a great summary of life, and how we feel it as artists, especially, but as people, I think we always want to feel like we're part of something, but so many of us end up the other way, right? We're told, we're directed, we're kind of funneled into what society expects us to do. And if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably a creator, I would imagine. And whether you've done it your whole life, that is professionally or on any level like that, or you just never done it professionally and you want to, or you just love it and you do it because you do it, you know what I'm talking about. Sure, there are some people, and my parents are amazing, but when I was in high school and I wanted to be a photographer, no. That was not a thing you could do. You can't be a photographer. That's a hobby. Finally showing potential, having my photo teacher behind me. Thank you, Mrs. Prince. I went to college for it. And years later, when my father was retired and we were talking about it, I remember him saying that it's good that you went off to do what you really love and do your own business because there's really no security. And I think as we get older, I might be now not quite as old now as he was then, but close. I think we realize that that's important. Like there are things, right? Obviously, having a steady job, having something that's just there, so the thing you can be part of anything, right? Just being part of the workforce or being part of this project. That's great if it gets you to another goal. But to really, truly be connected, we have to feel like we're part of something. Like what we do is important. And this isn't just the arts. When I was, let's say my job in college, when I started the job loading trucks. Like I was loading trucks to pay for college, basically, and not at the college. And through that, because I worked hard and I guess showed up on time, I was then offered a position to help manage something new. And that really changed my attitude towards the place. Up to that point, it was the job where I loaded trucks. I did a good job because that's me and I always want to try to do my best. But once I had influence, once I had the ability where my words, my thoughts, my ideas could actually be considered, they weren't always used, it really changed my attitude towards that job and made me really, really love it. I love the idea of feeling like when something happened, it was my fault or my achievement. And of course, trying to be a good leader, having learned this in the military, and also feel it very strongly, I always rewarded those that worked for me. I think that that's important so they could feel part of something. The thing is that if you look at a job like this, like the other day up here, we had some kind of a minor natural disaster. I say minor because, in the end, it wasn't too bad. I'm not going to get into that, but basically lots of roads are closed. People missed work, things like that happened. And, I was just discussing with my friend the idea of like how certain jobs are. The job that is like, well, I don't care if all the roads are closed. You need to drive 2.5 hours out of your way to basically use more gas and time than would be worth it to work this job. And these are usually the jobs that aren't the best, right? But then there's some jobs that you would do that because you feel part of it. You need to get there. You want to be there. You will go out of your way to get there, even in the face of a disaster. As long as be safe, people. But you'd go, right? You would get there because it was important to you. You're part of it. You're part of the team. And the ironic part about that is, what if you're using ironic right there? Let me know if I'm using ironic right. Is that generally it's the jobs that you feel very passionate about and would go 3 hours out of your way to get to are the ones that are going to tell you, don't do that. We'll have somebody else who's also passionate cover the job. Because when we create an environment around us that is comfortable, that supports people, that makes them want to be there, want to be part of it, people that feel like they're part of it, they will go above and beyond, and they'll actually achieve more for themselves too, because they'll just be better. When we achieve, I've talked about this before, like winning follows winning, accomplishing follows accomplishing. When you finish something, when you do something well, if I do really well at my job loading trucks, that gives me motivation to do really well at my business that I run on the weekends. It gives me a lot of motivation to do other things that I want to do. Being positive. I've probably said this before, but I remember a friend of mine once said to me, he was so busy. He was always doing stuff. And he picked up another thing. And I was like, how do you have time for that? And he says, the more busy you are, the more time you really have. Which, again, on the surface sounds like a silly thing to say. But the reality is that, yeah, he was up every day and active and going around. He was already out working and this. And because of that, the momentum was carrying him forward to do more and more stuff. The hardest part is getting going, right? It's that first gear in your car on the hill and you don't want to roll backwards. Now I'm aging myself with the standard transmission, as we used to call them, or stick shift, 4 on the floor, that kind of thing. Once you get going, you're on the highway, it's easy, right? You're cruising along. You're in 5th, 6th gear, depending on your car. You're kind of motoring along. My car was only 4 gears when I hit it. But anyways, you're kind of cruising along and it's easy, right? But getting started is the hard part. And that's the thing. If we allow ourselves to find the things that we really want to be part of and allow ourselves to be part of those things, that's the getting started. Finding that thing that we feel like we're passionate about, even if it's not ours, in the sense that it could be, like myself, I worked as a photo assistant many years. The day I decided I didn't want to be a photo assistant anymore was the day that I realized I didn't care about the shoot as much as I should. Because when you're on that set as a photo assistant or a makeup artist or a stylist or craft services, you should feel as much like it's your job as the photographer does, as the art director does, because every job is important. And if you're not being treated that way at your job, then, maybe you got to look for something else. So I guess that's that kind of came around a weird circle, but find the thing that you can connect to. Pursue that thing. Feel like it's yours. Embrace it. Don't just go to work or do the photography or do whatever because you feel like you have to do it or you need to do it. Do it because it's something you're there, right? You want to do it. You're not just following, you're leading your own path. Leading your own path? You're leading yourself down the right path to success. Anyways, let me know what you think. This week I want to talk about a new book I just started reading and a picture of God, as it would be. So somebody actually sent me an email. I'm sorry I didn't write down the name. And they mentioned this book, The Element. They said that they thought I'd like it, and I've just started reading it, and so far it's pretty darn good. So I'll put a link to this down in the show notes if you want to check it out as well. It's called The Element, How Finding Your Passion Changes Everything by Ken Robinson. Now, I'm just going to read, this is from the introduction. I think this is great, so I just want to talk about it a little bit after I read it. A few years ago, I heard a wonderful story, which I'm very fond of telling. An elementary school teacher was giving a drawing class to a group of 6-year-old children. At the back of the classroom sat a little girl who normally didn't pay much attention in school. In the drawing class, she did. For more than 20 minutes, the girl sat with her arms curled around her paper, totally absorbed in what she was doing. The teacher found this fascinating. Eventually, she asked the girl what she was drawing. Without looking up, the girl said, "I'm drawing a picture of God." Surprised, the teacher said, "But nobody knows what God looks like." The girl said, "They will in a minute." This right there is the perfect encapsulation of the artist, right? And the artist not as in just your drawing or painting or, what this child was doing, or not just in photography, but in writing, in everything. The idea that we believe, right? We need to believe that we can create the thing that we imagine, that we see, even if others can't, and that's important for them to see. This is, I guess, the face of God in that sense, as far as this little girl's concerned. You have an idea. And maybe your idea is not so grandiose as this. I mean, we're not all 6 years old, although it would be great to have the confidence and, just the drive that a young person has like that. Although they don't typically have the focus to keep it going, right? So I guess that's what we old people have. But my point being is that you can create the thing that's in you. And I was going to say in your head, but it's not always in your head. Sometimes it's in your heart. Sometimes it's in your soul, for lack of a better word. You just know that you need to get it out. And how you get it out could be any number of things. It could be photography, which is very likely since you're listening to this podcast, and I know many of my listeners are. But it could be writing. It could be poetry. It could be through sport or dance. It could be any number of things. Also, it could just be kind of being part of something. So I guess I want to talk a little bit about that as well. We can each find something where we make a connection. And sometimes that's the other part you get from this story, right? You have that confidence and of the girl, the almost artistic bravery. But you also have this idea that this child was not typically involved in class. They hadn't found the thing that they liked. Because, of course, when you're in school, they expect you to like the thing they say you're going to like. We're reading this book. We're doing this math. We're learning about the globe or whatever you learn when you're 6 years old. That's probably about right. But what this little girl was interested in was drawing, was because she had something in her that she needed to say, and she didn't have another way to do it. And I think what we need to do is, as I often say, find that way. And luckily, I think for many people, again, listening to this, they found photography as at least part of the way. But sometimes you kind of have to do the thing that's part of the thing. This is what I want to say here. So that it might not be that you might not be interested in taking the photo, let's say. Let's just start from there. Or you might not be interested in lighting the photo. You might not be interested in the post-production of the photo, but you might be interested in just the interaction with the subject. Or one of the other things. Maybe you're super interested in the technical. Maybe you're super interested in the post-production, but not the other. And that's also okay. Find that part of the art that you connect with and fully immerse yourself in it. Wrap your arms around that paper. Draw your picture. Make it yours with the confidence that it will be right. Because it will. What you create is true to your moment. What you look at, and sometimes people will say this, I look at my old work and I'm like, oh, cringe. But the reality is that old work is what got you here. So everything is a process. Everything is a journey. Find that part of the process that you enjoy, in this case, drawing for the little girl, and then fully dive into it. When you find that thing that allows you to just pour yourself into and show the world something they believe they could have never seen, but you can show them, that's when you found your connection, what you want to move forward, maybe your element. I'll talk more about this book as I read it. Maybe there's more influence there, but that's what I got from it right from the beginning, and I love it. I love this idea. I love this idea of finding that confidence once you find the thing that you love, the thing that puts you in, I guess, your element. So anyways, like I said, I'll put a link to the book down in the show notes. If you have any questions or anything you'd like to say to me, also down there, you'll find a link to my email. Go ahead and send me an email. Today, I want to talk a little bit about fleeting moments and fleeting items and fleeting time. And this inspiration comes from reading through the book Tools of Titans. I've talked about this book before. It's great. It's lots of little interviews. So I pick it up every once in a while and just read something new. This one is an interview with B.J. Miller. They are a physician and have done a lot of work with hospice and various other things. And what they have here is the interviewer always asks, an inexpensive item, something less than $100 that is super important or changed you or something like that. I can't remember the exact question, but their answer was basically a bottle of wine that they had. And the title for this section of the interview is called Delighting in the Perishable. Thus the name of the podcast. And it really struck me because when we think about what we often like think of as goals, right? As photographers, as people, we often think about things that are going to stick around, right? We buy a house, we buy a car, we buy expensive equipment, we buy nice clothes. But many of us, not all of us, will hesitate to, let's say, go to a very nice restaurant and just enjoy it unless it's a special occasion, or buy a very expensive bottle of wine when we want to try it, or a $15 piece of chocolate at some French chocolatier, because we're thinking that's frivolous. That seems like a waste. But I remember reading once that George Foreman, I think it was, said, if you have $1,000 in your pocket that you're able to spend, you'll feel like a millionaire. And that's kind of true, because I think the thing about feeling like a millionaire, at least in the moment, is that you're not worried about what things cost. You're not like, can I afford this? Can I do this? And I think that's really important. Now, not everybody can put $1,000 in their pocket and just spend it, but we can think about our time like that. We do have control of our time. We have control of our minds. We have control of what we do. And if I think back to when I was a bit younger, I had worked, maybe 6-7 years for myself. I was establishing myself as a photographer, still, working, but not a superstar. And I had established myself as a superstar, as photo assistant. And, I was hitting it every day. And I needed a break. And finally, luckily, before I completely crashed, I did that. I took a week, and I remember turning off my phone. And I went away, and I spent that week on the beach, which is weird because I lived in Miami at the time. I could have went to the beach anytime, but I went to Massachusetts. I went on Cape Cod. I went to the beach. I walked around. I saw little, cute shops. I ate meals. I rented a scooter. Went over to Martha's Vineyard. And I just spent the week not worrying about everything else. Now, I knew every day that I was aware, I should say, that this was only a week and that when I came back, I was going to have to hit it really hard. And there was a little bit of fear at the beginning, the first couple of days. Am I losing jobs? Should I just check my phone to make sure nobody called me? But I resisted it because I knew I read the signs and I said, if I don't give myself some time, I'm going to eventually break down and then I'll have to give myself some time, probably more time. And, in the end, it was an amazing week. I got back, I turned my phone on, sure, I had a couple of messages. Did I lose any work? Not that I know of. I mean, nobody called me and said, if you're not available right now, you can't work. Any of the calls I returned, I got those jobs or didn't based on the estimates I made. And really, life went on. And it made me realize that sometimes we need to take this time for ourselves, but we need to think of it as something special. Realize that it's not forever so that we can fully embrace it. If we know that we only have this 3-day weekend, let's say, only, don't think the whole time, oh, I have to go back to work on Tuesday if you don't like your job. But if you're thinking you don't want to go back to your job when the weekend's over, you may want to consider looking for another job. But maybe that's a topic for another podcast. But, don't be thinking like, oh, it's almost over, because that's so easy for us to do. Embrace it. Know that it's going to end, but that's the beauty of it. It is fleeting. So we'll take every moment in, we'll enjoy every moment. We'll eat the fine food, we'll drink the wine or coffee, in my case. Take those moments. And it doesn't necessarily have to be that you need to spend money. Sometimes you just want to take time to do something. Maybe you love art, but you hardly get a chance to go to a museum. Take a day. Just go. Use a sick day, take a day that you're off work. Don't ask anybody, for permission, if you will. Just take time. Say, I need to do something for myself, and I'm going to go to the museums today. And sit there and, walk around, obviously, but enjoy the art. Do the thing you like. Maybe it's going hiking. Maybe it's going sailing. Maybe it's just exploring a new area. Maybe it's going to the little local bar that you used to go to all the time and you haven't gone a long time because you've been so busy. Know that night that you spent at the bar catching up with your old friends is fleeting, that's not going to be forever. But because of that, it's more precious. And really think about things like that. Don't try to make things last forever. Accept them for what they are and love that they are the way they are. This is what I'm trying to do, and I would love to know what you think about this. Check the show notes below. You'll find all the ways to reach me, my email. You could join the Discord server, all that. This book, Tools of Titans, I will put in the description. I think it's always down there, as well as my book and some other things. So check out the show notes. There's always interesting stuff down there. And if you want to join my Patreon, the link for that's down there as well. I'll talk to you soon.